Hey, I'm Lee Domingue, serial entrepreneur, pastor, husband, proud father of 5 amazing kids, and boss, as they call me, to my 8 grandchildren and counting. Welcome to the Kingdom Builders podcast. I meet with some incredible leaders, business people, and pastors to learn from their life lessons and wisdom as we seek to live a life of true fulfillment and eternal impact. So glad you're here. Hey everyone, so excited. Got an amazing episode planned for the all-new Kingdom Builders podcast, formerly known as Legacy Starts Today. Got with the team and over the last year or so and just trying to figure out, want to make sure that what we communicate is really clear. We're providing value to people, helping people become kingdom builders. And so we thought that name, which has been the name of my ministry for years, I just thought that would be a great name for the podcast because it really clearly defines what we're all about. We're about bringing pastors and business people together to advance the kingdom of God. You've always heard me say pastors set vision, business people set the pace of it, and their destinies are really intertwined. And today I've got the honor on this first Kingdom Builders episode to have one of my sons, Harrison Domingue, joining me. And when we were planning this first episode, just thought it would be great to have Harrison, who works alongside me and helps a lot of churches himself, and also part of the Grow Leader team and part of Church of the Highlands as well. But Harrison's got an amazing story. Harrison's an entrepreneur in his own right, a father of 3 and growing, right? Growing. And but welcome, Harrison. Just so glad to have you, buddy.
Yeah, awesome. No, thank you for having me.
Well, we're going to dive in today and really talk about the relationship between kind of father and son and transitions and what does that even look like. I turned 60 a couple months ago, and one of the things that really was eye-opening for me, of all birthdays, it was the greatest birthday of reflection. Yeah, come on. So looking back at my life and sitting there going, man, 50 was amazing, 40 was amazing, 30 was, but 60 had a weightiness of reflection like no other birthday. And I remember looking back, and so it brought all these memories back of decisions, of choices I made, some good, some not so good. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn, as John Maxwell says. But it was moments like that where God took me on these journeys of refinement. But 60 was different. It's very emotional, that birthday, and had a great time celebrating it with friends and family. But it did something inside of me that really focuses on what I want to talk some about today. And that really is younger people, that person that's in their 20s, that's in their 30s, that's in their 40s. God's really given me a burden, a weight to make sure that you give away what you've learned and what you've lived. You can't just give away what you've learned. There's a different authority on it. And really, I would even say, not to over spiritualize it, but I think God's anointing is on when you've lived it.
Yeah.
And so when you give away what you've learned and lived, it's so much bigger. Like I've never been able to write $1 billion check to my church, but I am multiple billions a year just through the lives of millions of people that we've been able to help. Business leaders and pastors come together and seeing the gospel go forth, missions get sent, people get helped, the poor get served, and it's just been an amazing journey. But none of us are as good as all of us. But this next generation is really been kind of eye-opening for me, that like, how can I connect to them? Yeah. How can I connect to that 20-year-old, the 30-year-old, and how do we teach kingdom builders to this younger generation? I read in a book one time that when you're in the 20s, everything you live your life with ends with an exclamation point.
It's true.
But then when you get to your 30s, those exclamation points, they don't work anymore. They turn to question marks. And so because you're looking for margin, you're 30 years old now, you've been successful in business, you've started a couple businesses, and been successful at it. God's gifted you as an entrepreneur. You know how to make money. You and your wife, Sam, are very generous. You have the gift of giving. You're a kingdom builder. And you've learned that at an early age. And so I'd love for people to hear a little bit of your story and kind of some of your journey and I think it'll help them.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, even though I grew up, the son of, I always tell people, I was like, I grew up the son of a serial entrepreneur, always had different businesses and experienced a lot of success. And so it was honestly all so motivating to see your father growing up. And so, but on the flip side of that, there was also that, I guess, fear of failure that I dealt with early on. So, right out of high school, thought I was going to go play football at LSU. Thought that was going to be, God had different plans.
Yeah, you called
an audible and ended up having some health issues. And so, drastically changed my future. And then I thought, man, through a series of events of God just sparing my life, I was like, well, I guess I'm supposed to go into ministry. So moved to Highlands College and started going through there, was a youth pastor for 5 years at our Grants Mill campus. Loved serving student ministry, but I knew there was something inside of me. The only way I can describe it is I felt like I was at Disney World on a roller coaster, but hating every ride. It didn't make any sense. On paper, we were winning. On paper, we were, excelling. We were having over 2,400 students every single month at our services. We had 200 small groups, 300 drink. I'm like, I felt like we were running a church. It was wild, and God was blessing it, and there was favor on it. And so that's why I was confused, is why I felt, like something was missing. And I realized, someone, a great theologian I heard once says that you're created by God for God. And so I realized, and so hearing you say that over and over and over again, I realized, I'm like, am I actually living what God created me for? Even though it's a ministry, even though I disguise the favor on the house and the favor on my life is, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So,
it's good. It's all good.
Yeah. I was
But
like,
is it best?
But is it what God's best is in store? So it put me on this journey. And to be honest, I was afraid to even put my toe into business because, man, what if I won't be as good as my dad? What if it blows up in my face? And then, what would that even look like? And at PF Chang's, I was
That's
sitting
what
there.
we call it at our family. We call it, instead of PF, it's
Chang's. So we're sitting there at PF Chang's, and I'm with a pastor friend of mine, and he looks at me across the table, and I'm just telling him, trying to share my story of how just kind of miserable, feeling empty, feeling, I feel like I have this gift of business. I have these ideas, don't really know what to do, what's kind of next. And as I'm talking to him, he goes, it's a shame that you don't know anybody that bridges the two worlds of business and ministry together. And I was like, I started laughing. I was like, shut up. I was like, that's his thing. I'm going to do my own thing. And it hit me. He, corrected me as a brother. And he goes, God's a God of generations, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He goes, at the end of your father's life, he goes, what would you say aside from family, aside from faith, what would be one of his biggest regrets? And I said, I can tell you that. He's shared it with us before. He's told us that if everything that he lived his life for at the end of his life didn't really matter. And he goes, wow, okay. He goes, so someone's going to stand upon your dad's shoulders and build to make sure what he did actually mattered. He goes, do you trust someone else to steward your father's legacy? And I'm looking at him over some honey chicken, and I'm looking at him, and I'm just sitting here. I can't even eat. I'm just staring at him. He goes, if you're who I think you are, he was like, the moment that you decide to go all in, he said, the moment that you decide and quit running from what God's called you to do, he goes, that's where the peace, he goes, that's where the fulfillment that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And he goes, because we all want fulfillment. And so I sat there and he goes, so are you going to stand upon your dad's shoulders? He goes, you're in the unique position to where you have the skill set, you have the calling, you have the anointing, and you have the favor to be able to go work with your father to further what he's doing. And he says, so are you going to do it or not? I was like, let me go pray about it. And, the novel idea, let me pray about it. And so I go home, talk with my wife, and we're sitting here. And then I was like, I don't know. God's just stirring. It's just so much emotion. And that Sunday, I'm taking some students through Growth Track. I haven't taken my spiritual gifts assessment test in 4 years. I'm just there trying to get some students serving on the team, recruiting
Growth Track's the church is a simulation process.
Yes. So at Highlands, Growth Track, that's how we get people to discover their purpose. Hey, what is God? We take a spiritual gifts assessment test to say, what is, how am I hardwired?
Yeah.
And when I took the test, literally that was 3 days later. I take the test. I'm sitting here, and my number one spiritual gift was the spirit of generosity.
Wow.
So it pointed me to go to the legacy team. So I go to the legacy team breakout, and Tim Hurd was sitting there doing the interviews, and he was like, I don't think I even need to interview you. He was like, I started laughing, and I was like, well, I want to make sure I'm right for this team. And I was using that honestly as kind of like I think God used that as like a fleece moment for me, kind of like man, is this what I'm supposed to do? So fast forward, I come to you saying, hey, I think I want to serve in this area.
Yeah, but pause right there, because what happened is you ended up, my role at Highlands is oversee the legacy team, which are those with the gift of giving. So it's our generosity team. And Pastor Chris sets the vision. These people accelerate it. And so been serving in that role for a number of years, the last 10 years. You walk in with your wife dressed in your Birmingham blazer one time for our vision dinner, which is our big dinner that we do. It's really, really nice. And so people are dressed up well. And I never forget, you're probably, I don't know, 25. And I'm watching you walk into this dinner with your wife dressed up. You guys look great. And I'm like, what in the world is he doing in here?
Yeah.
And so you walk up to me, and I'm like, I thought you were maybe parking cars. You were working in the kitchen. You were part of the hospitality team. And you looked at me, and I said, what are you doing? He's like, Dad, we went through Growth Track. We went through Discover Your Purpose. I have the gift of giving. Sam and I give over and above our tithe. We're very generous. We have the gift of giving. We're on the legacy team. And I looked at you, and I was taken back a little bit. And then I'm like, okay. And you kind of bucked up to me a little bit. You're like, I'm on legacy team. I have the gift of giving. And I remember going home that night and God really dealing with me. It's like, he goes, you missed it, son. And I want you all to hear, if you're listening, all those that are out there, pastors, business people, what have you. But this is really important. It was a moment for me. He says, why are you just focusing on older people when these younger people, if you can get a 25-year-old living the principles of a kingdom builder at 25, what kind of difference will they make at 40 and 50 and 60? It's going to be a whole lot greater than probably anything done in my lifetime. And so it was amazing. So it's like, so start reaching those younger people, because as before, it was primarily older, wealthy people and so forth. So our legacy team, which is our kingdom builder team at Highlands, there's 20-something-year-olds to 90-year-olds.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful story of how God used you really to help, honestly, Harrison, open my eyes that, like, I need to focus too on this younger generation, because we're going to be defined. Great leadership is defined how well you're going to raise up the next generation to replace you.
Yeah.
And that's really important. But continue on.
No. So honestly, a super powerful moment for me. I bucked up out of my own insecurity of, am I supposed to be here? I think I am. I took the test. Now, it's discover our purpose, then make a difference. I'm trying to make a difference. And although my wife and I were youth pastors, we didn't have a whole lot, but the heart of generosity, yes, we were giving above our tithe because we believed in what our local church was doing, the difference it was making. We wanted to be a part, and I wanted to exercise that gift. But a pivotal moment for my life, that next week, you started treating me differently and honoring and started pouring into the gift that God gave me. And so the more that you honored that gift, I started to get, and this is a super powerful for me, and it was a revelation I had just the other day, even thinking about this podcast, thinking about to our journey. Had you not had that shift in perspective, I don't know if I would be doing what I'm doing right now, because you are my father, but also, I look up to you so much. The fact that it was like, no, you believed in me and you affirmed the gift that was inside of me. There's so many business people in churches and young people that are just looking to have the gift affirmed inside of, you don't have to do anything for me other than affirm what's already there and allow God to pour gasoline on it once there's that confidence. So that led from that moment of you affirming the gift on my life, for you challenging me, believing in me, I started to believe in myself. I started to think, maybe I can do this. Who's to say I have to wait till I'm 40, 50 years old to do something great for God? Why can't I start today with the $50 I do have?
Right.
And so it's like, man, if I do have 50 bucks, like, why can't I start now? That led to the creative ideas of doing my concierge service for automobiles, helping people buy, sell, customize. That led to some rentals. That led to when COVID happened and no one could get cars and gas prices were through the roof. I started flipping Teslas like crazy. Shout out to Elon. I'm like, Elon sent a crazy text message or, an Instagram and Twitter post. I bought up some Teslas, $100 reservations, and God multiplied that and doubled, tripled, quadrupled my income to where we were able to give so much more back to the church to be able to do stuff. But I think it goes back to, I don't know if I would have had the courage to believe in myself had you not believed in me first, had you not spoken that over me, had you not affirmed that. And I think it's a super powerful moment because there's not, you're a unique, breed in the sense of you're a pastor at Highlands, the legacy pastor, but you're also a successful business and then the unique sauce of you're my father. So it was kind of the 3-in-1 being able that supercharged the gifts inside of me to be able to do what we're doing now, to be able to come be a part. So as God continued to open those doors, I remember coming to you, God opened the door for me to step off the student team and in a healthy way to transition. As I stepped off to that, I remember doing my car stuff more full time. And the crazy thing is I never even fully stepped away from ministry. God magnified the 10, 15 hours. So if I was working some weeks 70, 80 hours and I learned this from my father, and young person, hear me when I say this, hard work is a holy redemptive calling.
Yeah.
God blesses it. God will, a lot of people, Pastor Sammy Rodriguez said this the other day, and it really, at our revival nights, and it challenged me. He says, so many people think that blessing is on the other side of sacrifice. And I don't look at it as the 70, 80 hours a week that I was working, doing both jobs was sacrifice. I knew God called me to it. And he said, blessing is on the other side of obedience.
That's really good.
And so I saw it as a moment. Hey, I knew God called me to do this. I didn't understand it. I thought it was for me to go full time into business, but God kept me in the two worlds, not knowing, setting me up for success of what I'm doing today with you, with Kingdom Builders, Grow Leader, because I needed to know the language of a church. I needed to know the language of all the areas of serving, learning, understanding, pastoring, because it's a different speed. It's a different pace. It's a different weight. Then I also needed to have, aside from the knowledge I've learned from asking questions and being around you over the years, I needed to have my own experiences and my own successes and my own failures to be able to where when I do fail, come back to you, help me fix this. Hey, what would you do to learn and to grow? So that set it up for me to be able to start coaching, to start as over years. A lot of people my age, a lot of young people that I'm mentoring, that I'm around, they want the quick fix. They want the like a lot of them like, hey, I've seen you. The thing about my world is I'm a car guy, so I'm going to have a nice car, and so that's more visible to the average person. So a lot of people, you can fake it for a long time. You can fake all this stuff. So a lot of people are like, oh man, I want to know what you're doing. I said, oh, no. I'm buying this car early on. I'm buying this car to flip it. I'm going to do this. And they're like, oh, what can you do? And I'm like, man, you don't really want to know what I'm doing. I'm like, it's a lot of sleepless nights. My kids go down. I'm staying up late. I'm researching. I'm finding cars. I'm trying to network with people while everyone's asleep and all the lights are out at the house with my laptop, just trying to do whatever I could to survive and to make it, because I knew there was a dream in my heart to do more. So as we start navigating that process, a lot of these young people that talk to me, they want the 1, 2, 3 get rich quick scheme. And I'm like, God can do that, but I've never seen him really do that. There was the 2 years that I sowed of busting my butt, working so hard to be able to, honestly, I think I needed it so God could trust me, because I had to prove on the front end. I had to sow in on the front end the time, staying generous, staying open-handed, open-hearted, so God could trust me with the more, so I know what to do with it. I mean, we talked about this yesterday, positioning my life, even talking to you as we were flying back from Mississippi, helping a church there. And just what does it look like to position your life to create even more margin to reach more people, to be able to be even more of a blessing? Because God doesn't have a supply problem. God gives seed to the sower. But if we're not handling and stewarding well and positioning ourselves and praying and asking God what to do, we're setting ourselves up for success. So all that to say, I think you did a great job whenever I was coming through joining the team of, you gave me a little bit at a time to prove myself. I was telling a 24-year-old the other day, he was asking me some questions, and he was like, man, my boss is just on me right now. I haven't got a promotion. And I'm like, well, when was your last promotion? He was like, a year ago. And I'm like, you don't get a promotion every single year. And so I had to tell him, and I was talking to him, I said, for 2 years working for my dad, one, he's also trying to make sure, am I really committed to this? Am I really bought in? Why would he give me more and teach me more if I haven't completed or finished or perfected what I already have? And I said, but also, there's also the element of the father-son component, making sure you have done, and I'll honor you on your podcast, you have done such a great job of showing, honoring and loving us and treating us great and giving us favor because we're your kids, but never nepotism. You've never just given us anything.
No.
It's always been, even growing up, I remember spending 8 hours every single week. It would take 6 to 8 hours for me and my brothers to cut and do the landscaping of that 6-acre house that you had. It was miserable, but it instilled hard work. It was miserable, but God used it. And so there was that mentality of never being too comfortable, even though you're my boss, now boss and father. And so just super excited just of honestly of what we get to do. Now been with you for almost 5 years now.
Yeah.
And so it hit me. It's almost been 5 years. COVID threw a wrench into everything because no one knew what they were doing for about a year, but also my timeline's all messed up. But I realized it's almost been 5 years that I've been with you, a little over 4 years.
And you've had your head down, and I think that's an interesting point you bring up that a lot of people miss is, I think as a parent, as a dad, and even as a boss, I think that sometimes the worst thing you can do is make it too easy. Yeah. And the worst thing I want favor for my kids. I want my kids to be blessed, all of that. But if they don't understand how to carry the weight of responsibility and also the weight of ramifications. So in great decisions, they win and they celebrate and it's beautiful. But when you make bad decisions, they're teaching moments.
Yeah.
It's the value of failure is learning. The value of learning is improvement. And so I tried to not give y'all, but would help y'all and teach y'all and hopefully model hard work and not be Santa Claus.
Yep.
We have you've heard me say that Santa Claus is dead.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
To all the listeners, I got to share the story. I got married at 21 years old. So I've been married for 9 years to my amazing wife. I will never forget this moment. We were saying goodbye on the beach, got married on the beach. It was amazing. And so, my dad got the privilege, it was that weird moment. Do I have him my best man or to be, marrying us? But I was like, he'll forever be in the photo of us saying I do if he gets to marry us. So I was like, so I couldn't think of a better moment for that. I'm saying goodbye. I go over to my dad. He's talking to a couple of buddies. I said, hey, Dad, I got to go. And he goes, all right, I love you, son. And he was like, I'll see you next week. And he hugs me and he whispers in my ear, Santa Claus is dead. And I said, what? He goes, Santa Claus is dead. I was like, he goes, your credit card no longer works. He goes, rent is due. And I was like, what? Had I known that, maybe I would have pushed it back just a little bit. I'm like, maybe I wouldn't have got married so young.
That's right.
And, but it was a great moment because you could have helped me buy my house. You could have paid my mortgage. You could have done all these things, but yet you used it as a moment to shape me so I could feel the pressure. But also There was a lot of times when I was 21, we were living off of, buttered noodles, and it was hard. And I knew you were eating steak over at your house. But there was that moment where it shaped us and it allowed Sam and I to bond together closer. And so now, to any parent that's listening to this, any successful dad that is wanting to help their kids, there is something. I am now on the other side of that. There is something that was instilled inside of me during that time that God used to propel me. We had this little saying in our house, just put that chip back on your shoulder. It created this, self-awareness of how much things actually cost, how much lifestyle actually costs, but it put this like accountability. And honestly, I think God just blessed it. I think God honors that. And so, it was hard.
Yeah. You're teaching. I think when you do that, you're teaching your kids. I think one of the greatest tragedies is when you rob your child of achievement on their own through hard work.
Yeah.
I think when you go through that, what happens is a confidence comes, a belief in yourself comes. It's like, wow, I actually did this. This is actually something that I did, and I didn't require any outside help from my parents or, extra money. And I see some kids that they have, whether it's wealthy parents or whatever, their parents have made it very easy because their parents had to work really hard.
Yep.
So their parents give them the moon. And then what happens is whatever you do in the relationship, you got to keep doing to kind of keep it moving.
Yeah.
And so that can be good or bad.
Or the time when you don't be Santa Claus, now your kids hate you.
Right.
Now your kids are mad at you. Why didn't you help me? And I'm like, I hear that from kids all the
You
time.
need to help yourself, and so we tried to do that, but that's a huge lesson that if you'll on the front end set that to where they value finances, they value hard work, they value that nothing is just going to come free. Nothing is just going to, there is no Santa Claus when it comes to adulthood, right?
Yep.
And so they have to look at life and say, well, you know what? I'm going to put in the work, and you're rewarded, honestly, you're rewarded for the problems you solve.
Yeah.
And so what problems are you solving? So you were solving in your car buying service. Customers wanted convenience. And so you were solving a problem there. And then because of the fact you were faithful, grinding out with your little fees in the very beginning, you're trying to put this model together and you're trying to do it. Then all of a sudden COVID happens, gas goes through the roof. Tesla becomes so valuable. And then what happens is you're there with all these deposits on vehicles coming in, and you're just flipping them and making very substantial money on it. That was a boost. Yeah. And so you never know when those moments are coming, but if you create margin, you can take advantage of those moments, and you're going to have to take risk. You had to take risk, and risk, I think, is a great thing. I think you spell risk faith.
Yeah, I was just about to say,
and it's jumping off and taking that leap. But what it does is there's nothing wasted. Yeah. Because you can connect the dots. You were an exceptional all-state football player, scored tons of touchdowns, running. I mean, you had a chance to play at the highest level, had issues that were setbacks, but you used those setbacks for refinement. Yeah. And they refined you, and all of it was not wasted because it positioned you, because athletics taught you the discipline of hard work, of working out, staying focused.
Also to receive coaching and feedback.
Yeah, and stay teachable.
So many people, we could do a podcast on that.
Just teachability.
Teachability. Yeah. You are great at that, even as the success that you've seen. Always, anytime we're traveling, asking, hey, is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything, if you're speaking somewhere, hey, did that land right? So, we could do a whole podcast on that alone.
Continuous improvement.
Yeah.
If we keep a heart of continuous improvement, is how I would say it, and not ever settle, and not ever, because comfort's the enemy to your destiny. Comfort is, I think when we get to a place where we start on cruise control, it's a dangerous place. And so I've always challenged all of you as kids out of love, the wanting you to be better. But ultimately, the ultimate achievement is you fulfilling what God's created you to do. And why I thought it was so awesome to have you on this first Kingdom Builders podcast is, one, I want people to get to know you because you are a kingdom builder. You are someone who you put your money where your mouth is. the way that you love your wife, the way that you love your kids, your work ethic, your love for people, the way you pour into people. God's hardwires you that way. And he's given you a gift to be able to help churches and help pastors, especially these young pastors.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'm not, I don't understand certain things that maybe a 20-year-old's going through, and I don't want to be presumptuous. And so rather than writing them off and say something like, oh, you got to learn it on your own. Well, there's some elements of learning it on their own, but I have a responsibility, honestly. If you want fulfillment, you got to give your life away. If you want fulfillment in your life, you've got to sit there and say, okay, I need to learn, and what wisdom I have, I'm going to invest it into others. And that's where I get my true fulfillment come. And my greatest wins are the successes of other people. And so when we moved to Birmingham to volunteer at Highlands after stepping away from the majority of business, everybody thought I was crazy. They thought I'd lost my mind. And they said, Lee, you have a gift to make money. You have a gift in business. You need to stay there. And it was at 50 years old where God said, give away what you've learned and lived. And I'm going to put an X factor of increase on that's going to blow anything away that you could do yourself. Because even if I would be a funnel for the Lord, that's still a cap.
Yeah.
But when you give what you've learned and lived and it effectuates others, none of us are as good as all of us.
Yep.
And so it's just so important that we're focused on those that are going to replace us, this younger generation. That's what 60 brought to me. Yeah. 60 brought reflection. It's like, who are you investing in? Are you preparing people that are that 30-year-old pastor that's just trying to make ends meet?
Yep.
Marriage is strained. It's tough raising kids. You got church people. You're trying to get a building. All the ups and downs, the haters, all these different things. It's hard.
Yeah.
And so if we can help by pouring into someone with a little bit of wisdom that we've learned along the way and help them go further, faster, and greater impact, man, that's what life's all about.
Oh, 100%. And we were talking a few years ago and was just praying, and God gave me a picture of these skyscrapers. And so many young people nowadays, the vision I had was, there's a lot, like when you look downtown in Birmingham, you'll see a lot of mid-rise buildings and only a few really high ones. And that idea, that concept of this is, so many people want to be their self-made man nowadays. So many people want to do everything on their own, when there's a lot of great people to get an upstream from, that you can stand upon their shoulders to build higher, to go further, to be to grow faster. There's so many things that you encountered. I mean, that's truly, I think, is one of the reasons why my car stuff was be able to be successful, because I had learned so much from you over the years, but I also had you to be able to talk to, because you had bumps and bruises and scratches from things that I never even had to deal with, that I was able to learn from. And so for the young person that may be listening to this, there's a lot of people around you that could speak into your life if you would just let them. You would be able to go further, faster. You would be able to see farther, taller. And I'm just, it was just the picture I had. It was the moment that I knew, I'm like, I need to stand upon his shoulders. I need to.
Isn't that though, even that picture of someone standing on someone else's shoulders, it automatically is a visual that you should see further.
Yeah.
You should do more. You should do greater things. You should see mountains and hills and other ground that we can't see. And so whose shoulders are you standing on? Well, some of you listening to me, I don't know. I don't have anybody. Man, pursue.
Yep.
You have to pursue, I say, you get wisdom from upstreams in your life, which are mentors. In order to get fulfillment, you got to give that wisdom away to somebody. So that's your downstream. So who's your upstream? You got to pursue an upstream. An upstream won't pursue you. So you got to pursue an upstream. And once you do, though, then as you give your life away, then you have this logarithmic increase of impact. And every 60-year-old and 70-year-old I know, they want to make sure, you know what they're asking themselves right now? They're asking themselves, is my life really going to count? Yeah. I really want to make it count. Because they see their runway is getting shorter and shorter. And don't wait. I would say, don't wait. And start with your own children. And sometimes it's hard because there may have been years of tension or whatever else, but you got to break through that.
You got to push through it, because on the other side of it, they will be forever grateful for it.
Yeah.
To the young person who's thinking, oh man, they're so busy, I don't want to bother. I'll never forget one time I didn't ask you a question for something and it backfired. And I wanted to, but I was like, oh, he's too busy. He's too busy. I've used that as an excuse. I remember one time you confronted, you were like, you don't get to dictate my schedule. You're like, allow me to tell you if I'm too busy or not. And I will give you a time when I can. It doesn't have to be that week. It could be the next week. It could be whenever. But had I, pursued that further, so I've just decided I'm going to wear you out if I got a question. I'm going to come show up at your house. Yeah. But use that grit with the mentor of, you don't get to decide their schedule. They'll tell you. Yeah,
don't believe the lie that say they're too busy. If they've agreed to mentor you, they'll make time and they'll pour 100%. Into you. And I think it's super, super important. So what are you most passionate about right now? What's the thing that you're focused on right now that is making the greatest difference and bringing fulfillment even to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind, probably thing I'm most passionate about, is when we're coaching some of these churches, when I'm getting on the phone, with the churches that I'm helping on a monthly basis, when I'm getting on the Zoom calls, hearing the stories, hearing the wins. There's a church in a rural town in Oklahoma. There's a church we've been helping. They're a church of, I think at the time they were around 300-400, bringing in $800,000 a year, and helping them restructure. And they sewed in on the front end of, hey, no, we're going to believe like God has more vision. God has more plans, more purpose for our church than what we're seeing right now. We want to reach. We're not going to believe the lie that, because it was the challenging phrase of God gives seed to the sower. God gives seed to the person that's going to steward well. So he's like, we're going to do everything we can. That church in 2 years now is going to close out at 2.7 million with 600 right under 600 people. So they doubled in attendance because they've had in 2 years, because they've had more resources to allocate to do more ministry. They've created more margin. They've been able to not even spend more. They're tightening everything so they can be used greatly. They can build buildings with cash. Probably one of the most fulfilling things to me right now is to use the gift that God's given me, the gifts and talents, but to help some of these churches and getting the phone calls of the wins. It's probably the thing that puts the most wind in my sail. And getting to be a small piece of getting to hear and see what God's doing across the Big C church in Indonesia, in Asia, in Africa, some of these churches in Europe, in Canada, these churches in Mexico that we're helping with kingdom builders all across the world. It's the logarithmic factor. It's the exponential factor where I was a youth pastor, had 2,400 students, and it was amazing. And honestly, Highlands is one of the biggest youth groups in America. It's unbelievable. That was just one campus. That was the main campus. And it was amazing and it was awesome. But I'm affecting tens of thousands of students, hundreds of thousands of students from all these churches that we're being able to help raise resources. So the thing that probably gives me the most excitement, because God's not the God of lack. God does not have a supply issue. God wants the best for your church. He wants to bless you. He wants to be able to come alongside of what you're doing to accelerate the vision of your church. But God always uses people. So how can we position the church to partner, to bring that person on the same side of the table? So I love to help these churches structure that. I love to help hearing the story of these business people. It's way more than just money. It's way more than resources.
When you make it just about that, you short sell it. It's just really,
it's transactional.
Kind of disappointing because it's not really about, when people hear kingdom builders, they think, oh, is this prosperity messaging? And it's absolutely not. What it is we want to help people fulfill what God created them to do. And God's created business people with a gift to go in the marketplace, kick tail in the marketplace, partner with the vision of a pastor in a local church to go see at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, it's all about people coming to Christ and then them going on a journey of discovery of what God's created them to do, and then them serving in that area. So we see more people come to Christ.
Exactly. Because it's, helping these business people, I want them to find the same fulfillment I found operating in the gifts that God given me. And so if the gift is generosity, if the gift is that, I had this thought just now and it kind of made me laugh a little bit, but the only people that say money doesn't make them happy are wealthy people. And I'm like, which I guess they're the best people, but I'm like, let me find out myself, let me make a little bit of money. But, having some success in business to where my needs are met. Because that's always everyone's, hey, I just want to at least have my needs met. And then when it starts to go beyond that, I realize for myself how little that actually brings fulfillment.
You're right.
Even in my scope.
Mo money, mo problems.
Exactly. And it was more things to spend it on. More,
more things than to maintain.
More things to maintain. Like all of now your bills are higher. You get a bigger house, you got a higher water bill. You got a higher power bill. When AC breaks, it's 10 times more expensive for some reason. Right. And so I realized, but I always heard that from you growing up, money will never satisfy. But I'm like, okay, Dad, but let me find out what that looks like a little bit. And I want these business people that are hearing, young 20-year-old to 80-year-old, I want y'all to fulfill what God's placed on your life. I want you to walk in the anointing of knowing, man, when you appear before God one day, did you do all that he had for you to do? Yeah, you checked the box that you got in heaven. Okay, cool. But is that it? Yeah. No, I want to know.
There is so much more.
I did all of these things and I want him to be proud of me.
Yeah.
And so I want everyone else to have that same healthy fear, but have that same revelation. And so to me, when I can help a business person fire them up to go kick butt in the marketplace, to go, hey, every deal you close, every sales contract, every lead, every car, every insurance you sell, that's another child that's maybe getting rescued out of human trafficking. That's another orphan being fed. That's another creating room for another person to come encounter the presence of God in the new building that your church is trying to build right now, or the campus that they need to launch. And so I want them to be able to see it the way that I see it, because I know that's where the fulfillment comes, because we want them to experience that, because that's that's God's best for your life.
Yeah.
That's what God had in store.
It's, what you're describing to me screams this. I think many people are doing some good things, but do you have the right perspective? Do you know I think when we get to heaven, there are going to be millions of people that were impacted by things we did that we had no idea that was the residual ripple effect of obedience.
Yep.
There is a ripple effect of obedience that I don't think we see fully until we get to heaven. But there's going to be that moment where God's like, or, Jesus is saying, what'd you do with what I gave you? And then it's like, wow, open this door. And there's a million people that were impacted because of an act of generosity, because of a forgiveness step, because of a mentoring thing, because of taking care of that person or pouring into. Maybe it was someone who you helped go through school, or maybe it was someone you coached and you affirmed that had a messed up home life and they don't have a dad and you were their dad as their coach, that you were able to speak life into them. And it was a pivotal moment of them moving from maybe a decision that would make them have a different legacy than the track that their generations before were on, that just led to destruction, pain, oppression, all of that. Whereas no, God has something new for you. And we have the ability to speak into that. You said in the beginning of the podcast, Dad, thank you for speaking and affirming. It unlocks something. I think when you affirm people, it unlocks something in them that is tied to them for fulfilling their potential.
Yeah.
And so I just want to encourage everyone, when you have the ability to affirm someone, do it. Do it daily. Speak words of life. Bible says that there's life and death in the power of the tongue. Why don't we choose life? And you never know who you're going to impact or affect when you affirm them. And so I want to close with this. I want to affirm you in your work ethic. Your work ethic, you work your tail off. You're thinking about it all the time. You're thinking about people. You're thinking about pastors. You're very focused on being a great dad. You've got 3 kids that are just 100 miles an hour with their hair on fire, full of life, just like you were when you were a kid, and just the way you love Sam, and the way you love my grandkids. And, but your journey has been one where you've had setbacks, you've had obstacles, many out of your control, but you've always responded with an attitude of being thankful. You've always responded with an attitude of being grateful, and you've always responded with an attitude of extending gratitude.
Yeah.
And I think that's a separator. And so I want to affirm you, because you do have a gift of giving on your life. You do really define what a kingdom builder really is. And it's really cool to see you walking in your own right and leading in your own right. And so I want to publicly affirm you in that, and that your greatest days are ahead of you. And it's just fun as your dad to watch it. Got a lot of work to do, got a lot of churches to take care of, got a lot of people to help, and want to keep doing that while being a great husband, while being an intentional father, and while being someone who just simply loves Jesus and people. So you bet.
Thanks for tuning in to the Kingdom Builder Podcast with Lee Domingue. We hope today's conversation has inspired you to live out your calling, impact others, and build God's kingdom in powerful ways. Stay connected with us for more stories of generosity and purpose, and visit kingdombuilders.us for more resources to help you grow as a kingdom builder. Until next time, keep living with purpose and advancing the kingdom.